Hi there everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to discuss 10 JavaScript questions or concepts which you will be asked in every JavaScript interview. These are the most commonly asked questions which if you answer well, then you can crack that interview as well. So without any delay, let's begin. So here as you can see, the first question is the difference between let, var and const, right? So this is the questions that you need to answer, and here is the answer that I have given. So let me explain it to you quickly. On a side note, what I want to say is that I'm not going to explain the answer of each and every questions in depth. I'm just going to present you the answer, and I'm going to give you the surface level idea. Basically, the whole point of this video is to discuss the top 10 questions or top 10 concepts that you will be asked in every JavaScript interview, so that you can know those questions and you can prepare well. I'm answering here, or I'm giving this answer here just to give a format that like this is the format in which you can answer. Make sure you just don't simply copy paste this answer, you make your own answer. These answers are just as a presentation for you, like this is the way hey, you can answer. All right, so let's start with the first question, which is difference between let, var and const, right? So var, as we all know, is a function scope, right? So var is a function scope which when it is declared within a function, right? So here as you can see in the new function we have this var hello, and we are trying to log this variable here, and then if we try to log, it is going to give us error which is going to say hello is not defined. Well, because var is a function scope, right? So this hello you cannot access outside of the function. So that is what functional scope means. And another is where var variables, it can be redeclared and updated. Basically what it means is here as you can see that here the grid variable, all right, let me highlight it properly. So here as you can see that we have this var grid variable which is saying hey hi, and now we can redeclare this variable again and we can say grid say hello instead, and it is going to update it. So that is possible with var. And another point of var is that var variables are hoisted to the top of their scope and initialized with a value of undefined. So what it means is, as you can see here, we have this var grid variable, right, or the greater variable as you can say, and we are trying to log this greater variable, and like here we have initialized below greater as say hello. But now before initialization we are trying to log here. Now if you try to do so, we'll be getting greater is undefined. Why? Because this var variable is hoisted, and before initialization if we try to access it, we are going to get undefined, because well it is going to be initialized with undefined value before initialization. And that's what with var. And now if we talked about let, so as we all know that let is block scope, and as you can see here we have let hello variable, and if I try to log, we are going to get the output. But if we try to log outside of the block, we are going to get that hello is not defined. Well, because the let is block scope, so block means basically the curly braces. And the another point is let can be updated, but it cannot be redeclared in the same scope. So what it means is, here we can see we have greeting variable which is saying say hi, and now we are trying to update the greeting variable which say hello instead, which can be done. But like as you can see here, we have let user equals to John, and now if I try to redeclare this variable and say let user equals to foo, we cannot do that. We can do that using var, but we cannot do that using let. It is going to give us error and identifier user has already been declared. So this is the error that we'll be getting. And another thing is let declaration are also wasted to the top, unlike var which is initialized as undefined, right? So but the let keyword is not initialized with undefined. So if we try to access var variable before initialization, as you can see that I've already shown you, it logs undefined. But if we try to do using let, we will be getting reference error. So this is also known as temporal dead zone state. And another thing is const. So const variable, whatever the variable that or the value we declared using the const, it maintains the constant value, means we cannot change its value once it is declared, and we cannot redeclare as well. So that's what const means. So I hope now you understood the difference between let, var and const. And now the second asked question is JavaScript a compiled or interpreted language? Answer is JavaScript is an interpreted language. It is not a compiled language. So basically an interpreter, what it does is, it in the browser it reads the JavaScript code and it tries to interpret the code line by line and it runs it. So this was the JavaScript in earlier state. But in the current time, JavaScript uses something known as JIT, alright, so which is known as just in time compilation. So basically it compiles the JavaScript code to the bytecode as it is about to run. So like JIT basically means it is using both the feature of compiler and interpreter as well. So that's what GIT basically means. Earlier it used to be interpreted language, but now it is being like GIT is being used here. So you can answer that properly. And the third most asked question is JavaScript single threaded or multi-threaded? And like if JavaScript is multi-threaded, how do we do multi-threading in the browser? So you need to say yes, JavaScript is basically a single thread language. JavaScript is not a multi-threaded language, remember, all right? But we can do multi-threading in JavaScript. Now you might be wondering, hey, you are saying JavaScript is single threaded, so like how can we do multi-threading? Well, you can do in the browser using something known as web workers, right? So web workers, what it does is, like, let's just say you have an expensive task that you have written using the JavaScript and you want to run it behind the scene. You don't want to block the any code. So at that moment of time, what you can do is you can use something known as web worker, which simply means it runs the script in the background thread, right? So the worker thread can perform tasks without interfering the UI, right? So that's how you can achieve multi-threading in the browser by using web worker. And in the backend also, if you're using JavaScript like Node.js and all those, so there are different packages and the systems or different ways through which you can achieve multi-threading. Yes, you can achieve multi-threading using the JavaScript, but you need to remember that JavaScript is a single threaded language. So in the interview, never say that JavaScript is a multi-threaded, because it is not. It is a single threaded. So say it is a single threaded language, but you can explain that further. We can achieve multi-threading as well, like in the browser we have web worker to do so, right? And now the fourth question is, what are lambda or arrow functions? And you need to differentiate between the regular functions, which is a classical functions, and arrow function. So basically what you can say is arrow function is a shorter syntax or a function expression, and it does not have its on this. Like this is the main difference. Arrow function does not have its on this, all right, or this basically means context. But the regular function has its own this. It has its own context, but the thing is that it changes according to the way function is invoked. You need to understand the major difference between arrow function and classical function is this. Arrow function does not have its own this, but regular function has its own this, and it changes according to the way function is invoked, right? So wherever at whatever the place regular function is invoked, that this is pointing to that particular place only. So let me explain you using the two simple example. Like here we can see this is a simple invocations. Like this is the example. Here I have written a function, simple invocation, I have logged and I have called this functions. So wait, this notion is giving me some issue. Now as you can see that I have called this simple invocation function in the global window, right? So if I call in the global window, then this is going to point towards the global only, and then that's why it is going to log us the global object. Like I can show you in the browser as well. Like let me copy this and let me open the new tab, and let me open this, and you know what, I can bring this down as well, not this one, and let me bring it down. And what I can do is, yeah, this one it can go. Let me clean this, and now if I try to log this, and let me remove this as well. Now if I hit enter, as you can see it is giving me the window object. Well, because we are calling this function in the window only, so that's why this is pointing and it is giving us the window object. So that's what simple invocation. Now we have another something known as method invocation. So here in case of method invocation is what happens is, as you can see we have this method invocation object, and inside it has two properties. One is username and another is new function, all right, which is having a function and it is logging this. Now here, how are we calling this function? Notice here carefully. We are calling this new function using this method invocation object, right? So we are doing method invocation dot new function. So here we are calling this function in the above here in the global object. That's why it was giving us the That's why it was logging us the window object. But here we are not calling this new function in the global object. We are calling using this method invocation object. So that's why if we log this here, it is going to log us the entire method invocation object only. So I can show you this as well. Now if I copy and paste that code here, and okay, the same code is being copied. Let me copy this code, and let me copy, and let me go to that tab, and let me remove that, clear it. All right, it's not clearing. Let me refresh this. All right, so what is going on? It is giving me some issue. So all right, now it's gone, and now let me paste, and now let me hit enter, and as you can see, it is logging the entire method invocation object only, right? So that's the regular function, and that's how this works in the regular function. Now the other question is call, apply, and bind. Now I have given many interview for the JavaScript, and this is one of the questions that I was asked quite a bit. So let us try to understand this. So basically what call, apply, and bind does is, like, let me explain you directly with an example. So let's just say we have this user1 object, and this object is having two particular properties, the name and the detail function. So detail function, what it is doing is, it is logging the name and city and profession of the user. All right, and now let's just say we have another user2 method which is also having the property name, and now user2, this user2 object also needs similar details function. Now the one way of doing is, we simply can copy this code, come here, hit enter and paste, and there you go, it works, right? But well, yeah, it is going to work, but this is not the way how we do it. In programming, we have this principle called dry, D-R-Y, dry. It means do not repeat yourself. Means if we have a particular logic or a piece of code that is being required again and again, then it is recommended that we do not use that code again and again. We simply wrap it in a function and we simply invoke it, right? So that's what the recommended is. That's what the best practices is. So it's not the ideal way to copy this code and simply paste it here inside the user2 object. So we need a different way. We need some kind of a method or a particular way through which we can access this detail function for the user2 as well, and that's what call, apply, and bind helps us to do, right? So it call, apply, and bind, both three of them helps us to achieve this particular task, but they help us to achieve in their own way. So first let us understand the call. So as we all know that now user2 also needs this detail function, but we don't want to repeat this code again and again, but we want to access using the user1. So what we can do is, we can do user1 dot details, right? Because it is inside the user1. And what we can do is, we can use dot call, and then inside the call we pass the particular this, or we can say context, or any object, whichever object wants to access this method, right? So here user2 is trying to access this detail, so we are going to simply say user1 dot detail dot call, and we are passing user2, and the rest of this comma separated argument that I am passing here is for this city and profession. All right, so these are the thing. Now if we try to do, then it is going to simply log us, like, for in place of this dot name, it is not going to give us Rajesh, it is going to give us Rahul. Well, because I have passed user2 here, right? So inside the call, it means you need to call this detail function not for the user1 but for the user2. So that's what it means, and it is going to log us Rajesh, New York City, and developer. So let me copy this, and let me show you here in the example. Now let me clear this thing, and let me come here, and I think zoom it a bit as well, and let me hit enter, and as you can see, we got Rahul, New York City, and developer. We did not got Raj as well, because we are passing user2 here. Now similar like apply works in the similar fashion, but the difference between call and apply is, in the apply we pass this argument inside the array. In the call we pass it as in comma separator value, but like inside the apply we pass as an array. So that's the basic difference basically between the call and apply. Both works completely same. The only difference is call passes as a comma separated value and apply passes as an array, right? If I hit enter, so you can see the first one is logging Rahul New York City developer. This was from call, and then the second one is logging Rahul Jaipur marketer. All right, so this is coming from apply, and now we have something called bind as well. So now what is the use case of bind here? So here, as you can see, in the case of call and apply, whenever we write the code and hit enter, it is basically immediately calling the function. But what if, let's just say, we have a certain scenario where we don't want to call this detail function immediately, we want to call it later. So that's what basically bind helps us to do. So let me copy this code and let me come to the console and let me hit enter again. And as you can see, we got Rahul New York City from the call, and we got this Rahul and Jaipur from the apply. But for the bind, we are not logging anything. Why? Because, well, we are storing all those details inside this print name function. All right, so that's what bind helps us to do. Bind basically helps us to store that data inside a particular value, and now whenever we need it, we basically can call it. Now let's just say we are in that particular scene where now we want to log that particular detail. Now we basically simply need to do print name, okay, and we simply need to do print name and call this function and hit enter. And as you go, now we got this Rahul Hyderabad and manager, which is coming from the bind. So that's how call, apply and bind works. This is one of the most important questions, and as I told, I was asked again and again. Now the another type of questions that you get is fix the below code. So this is another type of questions which is quite popular here. So what basically it is saying is, like, let me directly go to the console and let me explain it to you. Now if I copy this code and if I hit enter, so now you need to wait for 3 seconds, and there you go, it is logging the index of this number is four times, because as you can see here the 4 number. So let me explain it to you, this code first. So here we have this array which is having these 4 different elements, and we are looping through the array, and inside this we are passing this set timeout for 3 seconds. And as you all know that passing this 3000 means 3 seconds, so basically it means execute this piece of code, whatever this code we have written inside the set timeout, after the 3 seconds. So it is going to wait for 3 seconds, and then it is going to log, and here it should basically log the index of this number is, and it should log the index of this particular number as 0, 1, 2 and 3. But it is not happening in this case, it is directly logging 4. So why is this happening is because, like, whenever the 3 second is passed, till that moment of time this code was not being executed, but this loop got already executed for 3 times, right? For 4 times, because we have these 4 different elements, right? And the index was 3, and then the 4th time index got incremented and it became 4. But again, as you all know that at that moment of time the code doesn't get executed because the condition become false, and then the 3 second gets over. Now by that time the value of our, here we have used var variable, and as you all know that var variable is a function scope. So at that moment of time the var I variable was storing 4, and hence it logged the index number of this number is 4 times. It is logging instead of logging 0, 1, 2 and 3. Now the simple fix of this is we use let instead of var. It is going to work because, well, we all know that let is block scope. So for that, what is going to happen is it is going to keep the record of each and every variable, because let is a block scope. And now we have the fix here. We can come and copy this code, and now we can come here and we can hit enter. It is going to take 3 seconds, and after that, there you go, now it has printed index of this number is 0, 1, 2 and 3. So these type of questions are being asked quite as well. And then now another is like closures, right? So again, this is another interviewer's favorite questions, closure. Make sure you understand this well as well. So what is closure? A closure basically is the combination of a function and its lexical environment within which that function was declared. So it basically means that we have a parent function, and that parent function is basically returning an inner function, all right, this inner function. And now that inner function has the access to the variable of its parent functions as well. Like, let me explain it to you using the code only. Now let me come here. and let me copy and let me come to the console, and here let me explain it to you properly. As you can see that we have this function which is saying welcome, all right, and another is that inside this welcome it is having another function which is a function expression which is having greeting info, and we are returning this greeting info function, and it is simply logging the message that is being passed and then the name of the user. So name of the user is the name of the user is coming from the welcome function, right? So basically this name is the variable of the welcome function. It is not a variable of greeting info function, right? It is parent, but this still has access to its parents variable. That's what closure means. And now if I hit enter, it is simply going to work fine. So here in the welcome we have already passed is that John, and then here we are passing the message as welcome. Now it works, welcome John, and we are passing another message as hello Mr. Now it is working as hello Mr. John, right? So it is taking different unique messages and greeting the John. So that's what closure basically means. And now the another thing is interviewer will tell you that explain closure using a real life example as well. So for that I have this example for you. Now let me go to the tab again and let me paste the code, and let's just say we have this function called make sizer, and this function is returning another function. As you told that in closure we have a parent function and a child function, and that child function has access to the variable of parent function. In this case we have this size, right? And then this what this child function is doing is it is adding the font size of that particular pixel. And now what we are doing is we are calling this make sizer function and passing different font size 12, 14 and 16, and we are storing this return function here as a function expression in size 12, 14 and 16. That's what we are doing. And here we have three different button, all of them are having their unique ID, and let's just say user click on this 12 button, we are adding an on click, and then we are calling this size 12. Now this size 12 function is going to be triggered and it is going to apply 12 pixel towards the body. Now if user clicks on the 14 pixel, this size 14 function is going to be triggered and it is going to apply 14 pixel to the body. So that's how you can implement closure in real life as well. You're going to see the implementation of closure a lot in React as well. If you're using React, right, and on click and all inside the React, then you are going to see a lot of implementation of closure in the React as well. Okay, let me open the new tab. I don't know why this is for some reason not cleaning up, and let me open here and let me come here, and now we have the 8th questions, that is what are the different ways to deal with asynchronous code, or how can we write asynchronous code. So there are three different ways to write asynchronous code in JavaScript, that is using callbacks, another is promises, and then the third is async await. So callbacks was quite popular back in the days, but these days developer don't prefer to use callback. They basically use promises and async await. But it doesn't mean that callback is completely gone and you won't see callbacks in the JavaScript code base. Well, you will be seeing callbacks to some extent, but callbacks are not used heavily like earlier, right? Now we have better alternatives like promise, async await, even if you're making an API call and all those kinds of stuff as well. Now let us move towards the 9th question, that is what is a promise. So basically a promise is an object that may give you a single value sometime in the future, right? So basically it is a proxy value. So it is just a guarantee to your particular function that it is saying, hey, this is a promise that I am going to return you some value in the future, right? So it is going to give you till that moment of time some kind of a proxy value, and sometime later in the future it is going to give you some value, but that value may be in three possible states. Like that value might be either fulfilled, it might be rejected, or it might be in the pending state. So that's what promise is, and this is how basically you declared promise. Like you call the promise constructor using the new keyword, all right, and you pass two particular callback functions, that is resolve and reject. And like if the promise is resolved, you can do some certain stuff, and like if it is rejected, then you can do some certain stuff. And now in order to consume that value, what we do is we use promise dot then, and we simply consume the particular value. So this is where we define the promise, and this is where we consume the promise. All right. And like if we have some error, then we use dot cas as well, right? So promise are basically used to handle asynchronous operation in the JavaScript, and they are basically an alternate approach to callbacks, right? As I told, like now callbacks are used quite less. Earlier it used to be used heavily, but callback basically makes the code dirty and it is very difficult to understand, and that's why we have promise, which is much more simpler and efficient way to do it. Now we have the last questions, which is an async function. So basically async function is the syntactic sugar of promise only. As you can see, this is promise. Now you can write and achieve same result using async await as well. So async await gives you a much more simpler way compared to promise, but under the hood even async await is also using promise only. So in order to use async await, you can simply write async and then the function, and let's just say it's logger, and let's just say you're making an API call. You simply want to get the response, you declare a response variable, you write await. Await means basically it is going to wait until it gets some data from this URL. All right. So and you get the response. Now you convert it into JSON, you take that JSON and then you store that data and you simply log. So this is how async await is. Like you can do the same thing using promise as well, but async await gives you a syntactic sugar, a much more better way to deal with it. So alright guys, this was the top 10 most commonly asked JavaScript interview questions. I hope you like this video. If you like it, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to make more such content, and I'll see you all definitely in the next video.